Money Talks features market makers and leaders within the world of rare collectibles, currency, alternative assets, finance, and everything in between. Join the conversation and take a deep dive into the mind of some of the world's most impactful guests to share their strategies and lessons to dominate their respective fields. Hosted by legendary sports executive, entrepreneur, and investor, David Meltzer. This is Money Talks, presented by Stack's Bowers Galleries. We have some amazing guests coming up, but first, let me introduce you to our host, David Meltzer. David Meltzer grew up poor with a dream of buying his mom a house and a car. Within 9 months of graduating law school, David became a millionaire and achieved that dream. After becoming a multi-millionaire, he then lost over $100 million and built it back to run the most notable sports agency in the world. Considered one of the top esports entrepreneurs and investors, David is also a 3-time international best-selling author, a top 100 business coach, and the host of the Top Entrepreneur Podcast, The Playbook. His life's mission is to empower over 1 billion people to be happy. This simple yet powerful mission has led him on an incredible journey to provide one thing: value. Coming up on this episode of Money Talks, presented by Stack's Bowers Galleries, David Hall and Jason Boland. David Hall started a small rare coin company that specializes in high-quality collectible coins over 40 years ago. In 1986, he co-founded a company that changed the rare coin market forever, called Professional Coin Grading Services, PCGS. Over the last 30 years, PCGS has graded and authenticated over 30 million coins with a declared value of over $30 million.
Welcome to Money Talks. I'm David Meltzer, and we have another extraordinary David Hall, Rare Coins. Welcome to Money Talks.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
Well, the game has changed. Let's just put it that way. Luckily, I have a few of my own gray hairs, although I dye some of them away. I've been around the rare coins business for a long time, and as a buyer and a seller, I can't believe how big it's gotten. So I want to start way back when, I think over 40 years ago. You know, for you, your perspective of the rare coin business, what, when you got into the business, was your main objective with the business itself?
Well, I've always been a dealer. So, buy coins and try to sell them for a little bit more than you pay. It doesn't always work that way, but that's what I've always done. 1986, of course, we formed Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and that turned out A-OK. We figured it would work for sports cards too, so we formed PSA in 1991, and that became another monster. But all along, I've kept buying and selling coins. I do a lot with auctions. I'm a big fan of Stack's Bowers, of course, and I've done a ton of business with them.
Yeah, and through that grading side of stuff, who'd ever thought that that would be the main crux of all collectibles? We were with the wine people. We're with,
sure.
There's entrepreneur collectibles. There's
right.
Pokemon, but they all require...
Rock and roll posters are now graded.
It's crazy. Do you attribute your knowledge of grading and the importance of grading from experience, or was there something else that you saw as far as the authentication of any item?
Well, the grading skill comes from experience. As a 12-year-old coin collector, going through rolls of pennies and nickels and separating them by grade. And then later, grade is a part of value. So if you could grade better than the next guy, you could make a little money. The importance started in the 70s when there was a huge jump in the quality premium. I used to buy, when I could buy silver dollars for $5.50, really nice ones, I would tell a dealer at a show I'd pay $6 if I could pick, the better ones, and they thought I was crazy. Well, that now, of course, has way expended the quality premium for, the $5.50 ones are now $100, and the $6 ones are now, $300 to $1,000. The dealers, of course, some couldn't resist putting their thumb on the scale, and we had a problem with misrepresentation of the product. it was hurting the market, and it was obvious to me that a grading or a industry-wide grading standard would work. Now, since a lot of people said, oh, I had that idea too, but me and my friends are the only ones who actually did it. And we thought that PCGS, and we modeled the business to get about 3,000 coins a month to grade. First month we got 18,000 coins. Second month we got 35,000 coins. And within 6 months we were doing 100,000 coins a month. So the market agreed and needed it, and it's really helped the market. It's allowed for there to be things such as population reports, which has really expanded our knowledge on true rarity of which coins are hard to find in which grades, and set registries, which a lot of people do and enjoy, and that's also driven heat in the market.
Technology has actually always played a part in the market. You had mentioned scales, for example, and a lot of people don't understand the digitalization of a lot of the processes that were involved in collection itself. And today, people are so concerned about AI and a variety of aspects of what it can and can't do. But looking at the lineage or history of your business and the industry, technology has always played a role as a servant. It's a great way to get better at collecting data, distributing data, weighing product maybe. Can you talk us, since you're one of the true legends of the industry, how you see technology from the inception of getting involved with, which is now basic antiquated technology, to what you see in the future, whether it be AI or some other type of, technology that's going to be quite useful in providing value?
Collectibles is about the story. It's about the information, which is why the internet is a boon to collectibles, because it's the greatest way to spread information ever. And it's a pile of information that makes these things special. Why is this coin important? Because the high relief, for instance, the bureaucracy in the mint didn't want to do it because President Roosevelt brought in an outsider, Augustus St. Gaudens, to design it. They drug their feet until Theodore Roosevelt literally put his foot down and said, I don't care if we only strike one coin a day, we are striking this coin. That makes the high relief a little more interesting. At PSA, we had a bat that was used by Babe Ruth. Well, that's a pretty good story. But as it is, I think it was 1921 or 23, whenever it was, the paper in Los Angeles, I think it was the Herald Examiner, ran a home run contest. They didn't have Little League till 1936, I think, for the high schoolers, and a guy won hit the most home runs in all of Southern California. So the paper asked Babe Ruth to send him something. So they have a dated picture of him holding the bat and a letter from Babe Ruth explaining when the bat was used. Okay, now it's a cool Babe Ruth bat. It's a little cooler, right? Okay, it was used on opening day, the first game ever played at Yankee Stadium, and he hit the first home run ever hit in Yankee Stadium. Okay, well now the bat's a little more important. Okay, and it was a game winner, not a walk-off, but a game winner, so the bat's even more important. Okay, I can make it even more important. They beat the Red Sox. Nice. Okay, so
who, by the way, for those non-sports fans, is a big deal because he went from the Red Sox to the Yankees.
Right.
I always, as a sports guy, I always got to make sure, because I just assume everyone knows every sports story.
It's one of the rivalries.
Right.
Boston, New York. And so many of these coins have a story, and the story, depending on what it is, makes them valuable. And so my advice to collectors would be to learn as much as you can.
Yeah, it seems to me, and you've been at the forefront of all three of these areas that make coins or even collectibles valuable. One is credibility. Obviously, you're the king of credibility. You bring credibility to an item because you verify what it is. But then you have, here's the reasons that it should be valuable, these stories, like you said, but also the impact that these stories have had in history or maybe even in the future. But there's one thing that is always subjective that you know because you have been in this business for so long, and it's the emotions that I've seen in the sports world especially. It's hyper emotional. You know, stuff sells for so much more than it actually was worth because of the emotional aspect.
So why would a baseball card sell for $1 million? Well, sports is a big part of our culture, and people are very passionate about their sports heroes and sports teams. If you watch Billy Crystal on YouTube talking about Mickey Mantle, he literally tears up. So this is what people think. And money, collecting coins, a long history. I mean, you know, J.P. Morgan was a big coin collector. In fact, there's a great story. The U.S., now we're talking about the debt ceiling, almost ran out of gold in 1894, okay? So J.P. Morgan and his buddies actually loaned the government some gold coins. So in whenever it was, 2008, the government bailed out the banks. In 1894, the banks bailed out the government. So, which makes a gold coin from 1894 kind of an interesting thing to own.
And now that we are able to have live interaction with the experience, you know, you have these shows like Stacks and Bowers, you get down to the last 5 minutes of an auction, you know, there's the plain just excitement of trading and buying and selling and bidding. And also, you know, in baseball cards, it's a big thing to, you know, reveal the pack as
Sure.
open. They pay a lot of money.
Yes.
Where do you see this aspect going, the live streaming interaction and experience compared to the old days?
Well,
that was at a show.
I'm not real good at modern sports cards or modern coins. Now, over at Collector's Universe, we had a young man come in who sold coins on Instagram, which made my heart leap, as you know, means, you know, we don't want a demographic problem where we're all too old.
Right.
And I said, what kind of coins do you sell? And he said, well, the young collectors, you know, 13, 14, 15 years old, they like to buy Morgan dollars. Now that blew my mind that an 8th grader would want a Morgan dollar, happily. And then he said, the older customers, you know, the ones in their 20s, and I went, whoa, wait a minute.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's when you
know,
bring out the F.
They like to buy the Silver Eagles and everything.
Oh, do they?
And so I thought it was interesting. I called downstairs to operations and said, I don't care where you put them, you make sure you hire this kid. And so for young people to do that, that's great. The modern coins, I just don't know about. My numismatic brain stops with the Beatles' first appearance on Ed Sullivan in January 1964. I don't know the modern coins.
Is there still an ability to find rare coins at estate sales and antique shops, or is the
You
jig
can
up?
look.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say the 1969, not that old, double die Lincoln cent, okay, which is over 10,000. And I used to do something at the Long Beach Coin Show called Meet the Expert, and everybody would bring up their 1969 pennies for me to look at, because it's you kind of got to know what you're looking for. It doesn't hit you in the face, the variety, and I'd always say no, no, no. And then one day, a guy rolls up in a wheelchair with a veteran's hat on and says, what are these coins worth? And so I separate this one pile and say, this is change. Okay.
Good luck, buy some candy.
Go spend it at the snack bar on something and don't shoot the messenger. Then I go, this coin, 1969, penny uncirculated. I go, let's take that up to the grading room. So they bring it back to the grading room, come back down, and I go, here, put this in auction. It'll bring, you know, 40, 50,000. Wow. It literally, you know, his whole family was there. It changed their lives. Okay, so yes, you should look at your 1969 pennies. Unlikely you'll find a double die, but it's worth it. So buy the books that give the values. Pay attention to the Sachs Bowers auctions, which newer coins bring a premium. And yeah, look through your change. It's hard to find. The best way It's kind of like the old Warren Buffett thing where he and Charlie used to buy really good companies at a cheap value. Now they just try to buy really great companies at a fair price. If you go to Stack Bauer's auction, you're going to buy the coins at the market price, and that's okay. Pick out the ones you like, not the ones I like. Yeah. Don't let other people tell you what you like. Pick out the ones you like, okay? Watch it a few times, stick your toe in the water, buy some coins. You're not going to get hurt in one of these auctions, and you're going to buy great coins.
And there is a great diversification methodology of buying coins as well, because as economies change, there's certain things that hold their value and also have liquidity. There's a huge market on both sides of the marketplace, which you've always exposed. And like I said, you've brought the credibility, emotional attachment, reasons, impacts, and you've been an innovator of the capabilities so people throughout the world can truly enjoy.
Oh, well, thank you. Lucky guess. Anyway.
I'd rather be lucky than good then, if that's a lucky guess, David.
Rare coins are hands down the most liquid of all collectibles. It's just not a problem to sell them any day of the week.
You are a legend, and it's been an honor to finally meet you in person, David Hall. It's always nice to know another David, but the success that you've had and will have, it's an aura about you. You meet someone that has an open mind, an open heart, and open hands, they're bound to be successful over time. I do want to say thank you, because when you said that coin wasn't very old at 1969, it made me feel better since I was born in 68. You can't find this type of information anywhere. That's why we have people like David Hall here on Money Talks.
I'm excited to hear from our next guest, Jason Boland. Jason Boland is the president of Spectrum Wine Auctions, a global fine and rare wine services firm headquartered in Santa Ana, California. They specialize in fine and rare wine auctions, traditional wine merchant retail and e-commerce, wine storage, and associated wine services including inventory, transport, appraisal, and more. Spectrum Wine also operates the largest fine wine storage facility in Southern California, comprising over 40,000 square feet of specialized wine storage.
Hi, this is David Meltzer. I'm here with Money Talks, and we have Jason Boland here from Spectrum Wines, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, not sports, but wine. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
This is really great because as the size, scope, and scale of the audience, the marketplace evolves, it has really, I think, raised the awareness to what can be collected and what has been collected in the past. How long have people been collecting wines, and has the value always been in those collections?
And people have been collecting wines since the beginning of time. Some of the earliest collectors, like Thomas Jefferson, was collecting wine. Certainly the values have changed.
And do you know the story of Thomas Jefferson, by the way, of that wine collection?
Which one? Which part of it?
So he had a choice. Should he sell his library? He was going bankrupt.
Okay.
He had a choice. Should he sell the library or sell his wines? And that's why there's the Thomas Jefferson Library at Capitol Hill.
I did not know that.
So guess what he chose to sell over his wine?
He had to keep the wine.
See, that's a good story for a guy like you.
Yeah, he was a connoisseur, so he would go back and forth, and he was one of the earliest people to collect Bordeaux. So he would go over there and find the barrels of Bordeaux that he wanted, and he'd buy them and have them shipped back. Really cool story.
Awesome. And so from there too, so they've been collecting wines from the count of time. And what are some of the issues that they look at? You know, like with baseball cards, we have all types of different criteria for the rarity of a wine, sure, to the authenticity of a wine, to, but there's another nuance to wine, and it's actually taste,
sure,
which seems very subjective.
Yeah, the taste itself is going to be subjective, but if you go through the process of kind of like an auction, like for us, when we have wine that goes to auction, we go through a lot of different characteristics to see if the bottles that we think are going to be good or not. So there's going to be things like the color of the wine, the cork, the capsule. Similar to like baseball cards where they have a grade, we kind of have a point spectrum where we go through to kind of, it's not a grade per se, but it is going to describe the wine so that you can, as the bidder or somebody, think that the wine is going to be the best possible solution for you or the best bottle.
Is it possible to grade a wine at a high level but when they uncork the wine years later, that it'd be bad?
Yeah, we try to get the the best probability that it's going to be good, but certainly it's it's kind of a living thing, and so you could pop it and it could be bad. You also have taste preference, so someone could pop it and think, I don't like this, versus someone that would be like, oh, this is the greatest bottle ever. People having an affinity for old wine or new wine, and so those are going to be different characteristics if you like the bottle or not.
And when people are collecting wine, how many people are collecting wine for the value of the wine to someday either resell it, compared to someone collecting wine to utilize in the biggest occasions of their life or even pass on to their children or grandchildren?
Most collectors, big collectors, are going to kind of do a little bit of both.
They do both.
They probably start because they like the wine. They kind of like wine, and then eventually it becomes, like a lot of collectors, a problem. They end up with too much wine. Then they got to figure out what to do with it so they can, now it becomes an investment, or it's something they could sell, or it's something that they could pass down to their kids, or all of the above.
And I've been involved in sports collectibles for a long time, and coins. It makes sense that wine, even more to me than even Pokemon cards. But with wine, where are the communities that are servicing the auctions? Are there certain areas of the world, certain communities that support these auctions more than others, or is it ubiquitous through the internet?
The internet helps a lot, but generally they're going to be focused in where there's wealth. So, Los Angeles, New York are going to be big areas. Places like Denver, the middle of the country, Florida, there's a lot of people. We have an office in Hong Kong. We do a lot of business in Asia. Hong Kong's a really cool area where it's a duty-free area for wine, so there's no taxes on it. So all the surrounding countries have all their wine shipped to Hong Kong. But generally, they focus on where there's wealth. For the auction business, for wine drinkers in general, they're probably everywhere. But for the auction house, where the affluent people are, it's going to be wealthy.
There's a lot of auctions that are tying in experiences, regardless of blockchain or NFT. But actually, the wine and the auction is through an experience. Come up to this wine tour or whatever. Are there any of those aspects in the auctions with Spectrum as well?
We have done those before, yeah, like a dinner event or things like that, certainly. Or we get wine direct from a chateau, so that there's the Great Provenance came direct from, Chateau Mouton that's been sitting in their cellars for the last 30 years or 40 years or whatever, so you're getting a direct thing from it. There's been some people have played with NFTs, but it's still probably small in the wine business.
And sourcing wine and sourcing that side of the marketplace, are there certain collectors that continually provide different wines to the auction, or is it just a more random selection of ownership that is providing the auction with its best wines?
It's a little bit of both. So you're going to have a lot of different things why people want to sell. One is their taste change. So like they used to like Bordeaux, now they like Burgundy. So that's a switch. Or I like California wine and now I like Burgundy. So they're going to say, okay, I've got all this value in this Bordeaux, and maybe I'll sell this off and I can buy more Burgundy. So that's one thing that happens. Then you have divorce or death, like those things happen. If you have someone that bought wine in the 80s, they spent a couple $1,000 and now they figure out, it's worth a couple $100,000. Those people are going to sell because, hey, this is worth something now, and I can get some value out of it as a retirement plan or things like that. So I think just with like all collectibles, there's a lot of different reasons why people sell, but those are probably the main ones.
And as a content person and working in sports and media, content plays a big role in raising awareness. We saw, for example, on Netflix with Formula One, which is definitely in the same genre.
One of my wife's favorite shows now.
Right.
Never was into,
me too, by the way.
Never was into F1. Now she's like,
everybody loves the F1.
Yeah.
But I also see a lot of content out there with the wine world. And, obviously traveling the world on the Food Channel, there's a ton of great shows that are either complementary to that world that has elevated the awareness. Has that had any type of impact on the business or the auctions themselves?
Yeah, I think so. It just stretches your customer base. So all of that content's great. It kind of brings awareness to wine. Wine is one of those things where most people know wine, but it's a different thing to go from buying wine at a supermarket or a restaurant to bidding at an auction where the values are higher, the stakes are a little bit higher. You have to be a little bit more into it to kind of know what you're bidding on versus just going to the store and picking something out over I go to the top shelf or whatever versus like going over looking at an auction catalog and finding which wines you want. So the online content's great. There's a lot of people on YouTube and other places where they open up bottles. Gary Vee used to do it. He was probably one of the first. I remember sitting on my bed and going through and watching his things and he likes this wine and I would pick out that and for sure it's definitely got people involved. There's younger kids which is important.
You know, the interesting stories of the past, we talked about Thomas Jefferson choosing to sell his books over his wine, which I don't blame him. I actually hide my money in my books because my friends would never look in there. I would never hide my money by my wine because they definitely would find it there. And as far as the margins go, there's certain things that the market has a great fluctuation, which creates a greater advantage of, you know, the margins that are available. We've seen this in the coin market, in the baseball card market, et cetera. It seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that the wine market has a more stable environment. There's not huge fluctuations of, you know, oh my gosh, you know, this went down this much or up, like a luxury car, for example.
Right.
You see great fluctuations.
It's pretty unique. I think it's pretty unique when you look at, like, you know, we have databases that catalog all the different auction houses across the world and what prices sell for. And, you know, when the stock market makes big fluctuations where it's dropping 5 points or going up 5 points, whatever, the wine market just stays pretty straight. It definitely has its ups and downs, and it's gonna go, you know, probably with the economy a little bit, but it's pretty steady. Like a bottle that's worth $100 today is usually going to be worth $100 a couple weeks from now, or a month from now, or 6 months from now, depending on what the wine is.
Right, and yet there's a few wines that are surprises. The same we were talking earlier about, you know, the half Honus that somebody, you know, would buy a half of a Honus Wagner card for $400,000. That's surprising to the market.
Right.
Have you seen any surprises in the wine market ever that, you know, kind of out of nowhere, you know, something like a $2 chuck is worth $100 or something?
Yeah, we get like some obscure vineyard, like take for example, someone that passes away. That generally could have a spike in demand because that particular, or a winemaker passes away. That demand for that wine goes up because that person's never going to make that wine anymore. So you see that happen. Other spikes would be scores, like someone comes out with a big score, like a 100-point score drops, that makes the price go up.
Yeah.
So there's things like that, or just kind of maybe it gets trendy, and it's a trendy thing. So when you have a place like Hong Kong that goes after a Grand Cru Burgundy, like Arnaud On, for example, there's only a small production, maybe a couple barrels of this wine. So if Hong Kong thinks that's trendy, or the United States thinks that's trendy, that's going to drive the price and the demand up for that particular bottle or that particular wine.
Which seems like a risky proposition to create a wine and only have, you know, a limited amount of it available.
Sometimes they're stuck because they only have so much vineyard space. So like in Burgundy, it's small. Like they only have so much land, and so that particular guy, or that particular cuvee might only be one barrel. And so, you know, he can charge a lot for it if he's a good producer.
And what about the supply chain? You talked about Asia, for example, and during COVID, was it difficult because we were talking about, you know, actually having, it's a lot easier to send a coin and keep that secure.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do about a perishable in a bottle. What were some of the challenges in supply chain during COVID, and how have they resolved themselves now that we're supposedly post-COVID?
Right. So the biggest was you couldn't get wine from France. That was the big thing because everything was shut down. So you couldn't bring any wine in. And then we had our huge demand increase too because everyone was home drinking. They weren't at work; they were drinking. There was a lot of consumption.
A good reason to.
Yeah, you didn't have to wake up in the morning tomorrow. You didn't have anything to do.
Right.
So we saw a huge demand and increase in demand, but then the supply coming in slowed down, which actually helped with the auction market because that helped push up prices. So, you know, when people wanted something, they had to go find it, and an auction was a great source for that. You know, generally those things have gone away. You know, Europe still has their issues with strikes and other nonsense that they like to do that slows down our supply chain. That's kind of been since the beginning of time. Going to Asia was tricky. Same thing, we ship a lot of wine to Asia for the customers to get their wine, and that was all shut down. So, you know, we worked through a lot of those things. People were patient because that's kind of just what it was. But more or less, they've worked their way through it. You know, the prices have stayed where they are though, so the price escalation is still a lot. Like the container costs are a lot, packaging costs are still a lot, labor is still a lot. Those things have not gone back to where they were before, which unfortunately kind of gets passed down to the consumer. But you know, all in all, logistics are kind of back to where they're supposed to be now for wine.
And as far as location in America, obviously we know where the heart center of wineries are up in Napa. But, you know, with the fires and with the suppliers, they've really expanded to some different places where some fine wines are being developed and harvested, I guess. Where are some of the places in America that are creating competition for Napa as the best vineyards?
You know, Napa still has its stronghold, but you know, places like Santa Barbara, Paso, those places have a lot of neat up and coming things. There's some really cool stuff going on in Mexico and Guadalupe Valley, so people have gone down there. You know, Napa, obviously, there's just like Bordeaux or Burgundy. There's a shortage of land. So you can't really, even if you wanted to expand, you couldn't. So, I think that most of these transitions are going to places that just have room. I think they're changing grapes a little bit because of climate change and things like that. One interesting thing is 2022 Bordeaux had one of the hottest summers on record, and they were able to produce wines that were absolutely amazing. So for them, climate change has helped them dramatically.
Amazing. And then as far as the laws, because it is alcohol, are there still challenges in distribution to different states? Are there a difficult situation to distribute into different states and to check and verify ages even? What are some of the challenges of distributing nationwide?
Yeah, so the age part is pretty easy because FedEx and UPS just have to do a age verification when they drop it off. So they're checking IDs anyway, so that part's not too tricky. But shipping wine to other states is very tricky still. There's a lot of rules that were prohibition rules or prohibition laws that are still in place. So, California, I can't ship wine to New York or ship wine to these different places without specific licenses or going through someone that has the licenses. So logistics are not like, just ship a letter to whomever or package to whoever, like Amazon can deliver to any place. But wine's different. So, there's a lot of rules and regulations we have to follow. There's some places we can't ship to, period. And so that's frustrating. It's frustrating for the consumer. It's frustrating for us.
Does the alcohol have to be shipped from one central location? Or is there a drop ship type of opportunity when you have the auctions? Can the owner still hold and possess it, and then when it's sold, ship it? Or is it one central location?
So we take it all just so we can inspect it. So that's a big part of our process.
Yep.
We want to inspect it. We want to make sure it's actually there. That would be a liability if, like, say, somebody buys something and then the consignor disappears or whatever, and we can't get it. That would be a bad experience. So we take everything in. We catalog it. We image it. We make sure that it meets our criteria. That we think the bottles are good, put them up on our website, put it in the warehouse, and then ship it out when they sell.
Last question, recommendation. If I was going to go and look at the Spectrum Wine Auction, what should I look for? What would be your recommendation?
See, that's tough. I think the biggest thing is you kind of know what you like. So, if you like California wines, that's something that's different than, Burgundy, so or the grapes or whatever. So, like, I don't know, what kind of wine do you like?
I like cabs.
So cabs. Have you had old cabs, like aged cabs?
Yeah.
So I don't know. The website allows you to kind of pick apart. So you can go through, look at scores, you can look at areas, you can look at producers, you can look at anything. So you can kind of just go through it and just skim through and find something that's interesting, find something that's in your price point, just place a bid, see if you get it, and just kind of experiment and find out what you like.
I love it. The old adage holds true when it comes to any type of auction. People buy on emotion for logical reasons, but they give you all the information and guarantee it at Spectrum Auctions. You got to check out Jason Boland and his company. Thank you so much for joining me, Jason. This is David Meltzer with Money Talks.
Thanks for watching today's episode of Money Talks, presented by Stack's Bowers Galleries. See you next time.